Chapter 23. The Empty Book.
They won't let me visit him the first day, and Graham says I'll just have to be patient and let the doctors do their business. But I can't stand just sitting around, so I decided to walk over to the hospital, which Grim says is miles and miles, would suit myself. I know how to get there, because Freak and I went yonder that way once, so he could show me the medical research building. It's not the same, though, without Freak along to turn the houses into castles, and the swimming pools into moats. All I keep thinking about is what a jip it is to have to go to the hospital on your birthday. Finally, I get there and I see the Fair Gwen's car in the visitor parking lot, but Grim says I should leave her alone and let her tend to her son. So what I do is I go around back to the medical research building and find this stupid little tree I can sit under. I have that old ornithopter bird with me, and I'm winding it up and flying it around, figuring maybe Freak will get a chance to look out the window and see it flittering by. That's my plan, and I'm under the puny little tree messing with the bird until this guy mowing the lawn makes me move. So I wander around to the front of the hospital, and that's when the Fair Gwen finds me. "Maxwell!" she says, and she gives me this great big hug, a wet hug, because she's been crying. "Max, we've been looking all over for you. Kevin wants to see you. He's making quite a fuss about it, and Dr. Spivak says it's okay, but just for a few minutes." So the Fair Gwen takes me inside, and I figure we're heading to the medical research building, but instead we go into the regular hospital. "He's in the ICU, she says. "So they're taking really good care of him?" "They're doing their best, Max," she says. The intensive care unit is this place where there are so many nurses you can't hardly turn around without bumping into one, which I do as soon as we get there. Every patient gets a room alone, and there's all this electronic gear the Fair Gwen said is called telemetry, which means when Freak sneezes, the nurses know about it before he can wipe his nose. I'm not scared at all until I actually go into his room, and I see how small he looks on the bed. They've got him sitting up with all these tubes going into his arms and up his nose, and Dr. Spivak is guarding him. She won't let me come too close.
"I thought no visitors was the best policy for now,"
Dr. Spivak says.
"But what Kevin wants, Kevin gets."
Dr. Spivak is this small woman with short red hair and a real stern face, and it's like she's mad because Freak wants to see me, or because I'll break some of her precious equipment.
"That will be all,"
Freak says to her.
You are dismissed."
The thing is, his voice sounds funny. Not just faint and weak, but kind of whistling. Only when I get closer I see he's got this weird little plastic button stuck in his neck.
"It's called a tracheotomy,"
he says, holding his finger close to the button, which stops the whistling noise.
"Standard procedure to facilitate breathing."
"Does it hurt?"
"No way,"
he says.
"I think it's cool. Listen to this."
Then he plays with his finger against the button, making his throat whistle a tune, which he says is the theme from Star Trek, although you can hardly recognize it. "So when do you come home?" I ask. Freak can't move much the way they got him set up in bed, so he sort of shakes his eyes instead of his head.
"I'm not coming home,"
he says.
"Not in my present manifestation."
I go, "What?"
"The bionic unit is on red alert.
he says.
Tonight, they'll take me down there for my special operation. The next time you'll see me, I'll be new and improved."
"I'm scared," I say.
"Don't be a moron," he says. "You're not the one having surgery."
"I still wish they wouldn't,"
"Don't argue with me,"
he says. I have to lean close to hear him because his voice is so small and whispery. He goes,
"If you argue with me, I'll get upset, and then they can tell on the telemetry, and then you'll get in trouble."
So I just stand there like a lump and don't say anything for a while. I put the ornithopter on the foot of the bed, but I don't think he notices.
"See that book on the table?"
He asks. He can't point, but I see the book on the table.
"Open it,"
he says. The book reminds me of the dictionary he gave me for Christmas, except when I open it, all the pages are blank.
"That's for you,"
he says.
I want you to fill it up with our adventures.
Huh?
Write it down, dummy. I was going to do it, but now it looks like I'll be busy getting used to my new bionic body. It'll probably take me weeks just to learn how to walk with long legs.
I put the book down. You're the one with the brain, I say. I'm the long legs.
Don't get me upset.
He warns.
I won't have time, so you'll have to do it. Just write it all down like you're talking. Put in all the fun we had, the cool things we did, our adventures.
But you know, I can't write, Kevin.
It's all in your head, Max. Everything you can remember. Just tell the story of Freak the Mighty. No big deal.
I pick the book back up, but I don't say anything more about how hopeless it is. Me trying to write stuff down. Because I don't want to set off the telemetry. He does that himself about a minute later, when he starts to cough, and before I can say anything, the room is swarming with nurses, and Dr. Spivak is telling me I have to leave.
Out this second, young man, and let us do our jobs.
They let me wait outside the ICU with the fair Gwen, who was just standing there at the window, wringing her hands, and not saying anything. And then, finally, they came out and say he's okay, it was just a bad spell, that they have him stabilized. A while later, Graham comes into the hospital, and she drives me home. Nobody talks much at supper that night, except when Graham opens his big mouth and says,
Poor Gwen looks like she's in terrible pain.
I go, Poor Gwen? She's not the one having a special operation. Grim and Graham just look at each other like they can't believe I'm so dumb. And finally Graham says,
Maxwell, dear, make an effort to eat your vegetables.
That night, I put the empty book in the pyramid box for safekeeping, and for good luck.
Chapter 24, The Return of Kicker.
The deal is, I'm not supposed to bother anybody at the hospital. Yeah, right. Like me being there is going to screw things up. The way everybody's acting around here, you're supposed to shut up and not do anything but wait, which makes me crazy. So early the next morning, when Grim is still snoring loud enough to rattle the window panes, I get up and sneak out of the house. The way I figure, I can check on Freak and be back in time for breakfast, no harm done. It doesn't work out like that, to say the least. The sun is just coming up over the mill pond, and there's this spooky mist on the water. You can hear all the frogs making a racket on their lily pads, and the mosquitoes sound like bullets whizzing by. And I have to kind of slap and run until I get clear of that smelly old pond. Moving fast, like the sun is chasing my heels, I'm running down this long, faint shadow of me that stretches out ahead. You can't ever catch up with it. I'm thinking with my feet, like the rest of me is still asleep. Not that I'm completely alone. There's this one old guy. He's actually out cutting his lawn. He's got these headlights rigged up on his rider mower, and he's wearing pajamas too, like it's normal. Everybody does it. When I get to the hospital, the street lights are just starting to click off. The lobby is empty, and there's nobody at the desk to tell me I can't be visiting patients at the crack of dawn. There are plenty of nurses in the ICU, though, and they see me coming. This one woman runs right up from behind the telemetry station, and she's got her hands up to her mouth, and I'm pretty sure she's trying to shush me, even though I'm not making any noise. She's not telling me to be quiet, though. She's saying,
Oh my God, you must be Maxwell.
even though she's never seen me before in her life. I go, Is Kevin back yet?
Oh dear, she says.
Is he going to be okay?
Oh dear, she says. Oh dear.
Now more nurses are coming out of the ICU. One of them is the one I accidentally bumped into yesterday, and when she sees me, she goes,
Better page Dr. Spivak. Kevin was her patient.
That's when I notice some of the nurses are crying and looking at me strange, and all of a sudden I just go nuts. I'm saying, no way, no way. And this nurse is trying to throw a hug on me, and I push her away. Then I'm running down the hall, and it's like I'm Kicker again, ready to just blast anybody who dares touch me. And I have to keep running, and I'm skidding around in the corners and bumping into walls, and no one can even touch me, even if they're brave enough to try. I just keep running and running until I get to these glass doors that say medical research. The doors are all locked, and it's dark inside. Behind me, people are shouting to call the guards. I punch my hand right through the glass, and I'm inside, skidding over broken glass through the dark, and I keep going until I come to this other set of doors. No admittance. No glass this time. They're solid, so I can't punch through, and I'm kicking and kicking, slamming into the doors. That's when all the hospital cops catch up with me. A bunch of them jump on me, and I keep going, running around in circles like an accident of nature, until finally there's so many of them on me I can't stand up anymore. They're putting handcuffs on my wrists and my ankles, and they're sitting on me, and they're going,
"We have to medicate him."
said this one cop, and he says,
"What, with an elephant gun?"
and that's how Dr. Spivak finds me, covered with cops. She's this worried face leaning down. Her eyes are red and blurry, and she's saying,
I'm sorry, Maxwell. We did our best. Better let me bandage up that hand. You're bleeding.
He believed you, I say. He said you could give him a new body, and he believed you.
What are you talking about?
The special operation, I say, the bionics unit. Dr. Spivak makes the cops let me up and says she'll be responsible, but they leave the handcuffs on me just in case. The cop who was talking about needing an elephant gun has this nightstick out, and like he's ready to bot me if I make a move. Dr. Spivak sighs and says,
Somebody get me a coffee, please.
And then she looks at me and goes,
You'd better tell me all about it.
So while she's bandaging up my hand, I tell her about how Freak has been coming to the medical research lab every few months to get fitted for his new bionic body. And Dr. Spivak's face goes soft, and she nods to herself and says,
Well, that explains it.
It was all a lie, wasn't it? I say. You were just telling him that so he wouldn't be scared.
You know better than that, Maxwell. You couldn't lie to Kevin. I tried a little fib on him when he was about 7 years old because I didn't think a child that little could handle the truth. And you know what he did? He looked up at his disease in the medical dictionary.
That's when I know she's telling the truth. Freak in his dictionary.
Kevin knew from a very young age that he wasn't going to have a very long life, she says. He knew it was just a matter of time.
So he was lying about getting a robot body? Dr. Spivak is shaking her head.
I don't think it was a lie, Maxwell. Do you? I think he needed something to hope for, and so he invented this rather remarkable fantasy you describe. Everybody needs something to hope for. Don't call it a lie. Kevin wasn't a liar.
No, I say. But what happened to him, really?
I could tell you all the medical terminology, she says. But what finally happened is his heart just got too big for his body.
There was talk about arresting me for busting up the hospital. The cop with the nightstick was in favor. But finally, they released me into custody of Grim. On the way home, he goes,
"Do you want to talk about it?"
Just leave me alone, I say.
"You got it,"
he says.
Chapter 25. What Loretta Said.
That was a year ago. I had in the down under for days and days, and I kept the door closed, which is why I missed the funeral and the fair Gwen going away. Graham told me about it afterwards. How she couldn't stand live in the house with Kevin gone, and who could blame her? Graham threatened to unscrew my bedroom door, but he never did. He just kept saying I should come up for Graham's sake, and sometimes she'd come down and say I should come up for Grim's sake, and so on and so forth, until finally I gave up and came out. I don't know if this makes any sense. For a long time, I felt like I was a balloon, and somebody had let all the air out of me. I didn't care if I ever got that air back, because what does it really matter? We're all going to die in the end. And that's how down I was feeling, and sorry for myself. Grim tried to tell me, it isn't how long you got that matters, it's what you do at the time you have. But that sounded so lame and puny next to Freak dying, I just didn't want to hear it. This one day, just before school was supposed to start, I was moping around the backyard, thinking about how pointless and stupid everything was. Grim comes over and says,
You know what? Most of us go all the way through life, and we never have a friend like Kevin. So maybe you should count yourself lucky.
Yeah, right, I say.
Suit yourself,
He says.
but let's get one thing straight. You're going back to school if I have to hitch a rope to the bumper and drag you there. Is that clear?
So I went, and I hated every minute of it. And I especially hated how people kept feeling sorry for me, as if it was me who died. Finally, one time, even Tony D came up and said it was a shame what happened. And I could see he really meant it. And I just blew up, and I told him if he ever felt sorry for me again, I'd put him head first in the meal pond and pound him down into the mud like a fence post. So we're enemies again, which is just the way I like it. Not too long after that, there was this winter by then, I saw Loretta Lee on the street. She's still on the neck brace, and you could smell booze on her breath. What do you expect, a miracle? Just 'cause she lost her head and acted good for a couple minutes? Anyhow, Loretta sees me and she says,
Did you hear about Gwen? She's in California. She's got a new boyfriend. His name is Rick, and they're crazy about each other. Ain't that good news?
I guess so.
Take it from me,
She says,
it is. So what are you doing these days?
nothing. She gives me this long look. She goes,
Nothing's a drag, kid. Think about it.
I thought about it all the way home. That night, I pulled the pyramid box from under the bed and got the empty book out of the pyramid. And I'm thinking, who are you kidding, Maxwell Kane? You haven't got a brain, and that's the truth, the whole truth. The unvanquished truth is how Freak would say it. So I wrote the unvanquished truth stuff down, and that kept going for months and months until it was spring again, and the world really was truly green all over. By the time we got here, which I guess should be the end, I'm feeling okay about remembering things. And now that I've written a book, who knows? I might even read a few. No big deal.
The end.